The UFC thinks you're dumb. That's why they're giving you these painfully mid UFC fight nights. The Apex is a scam that was developed during the Great Cough of 2020. It started off as a good thing. That's what Fight Island also was. And then it became a very easy way for the UFC to excusably make bad fight nights, and they're just going to put them there. And they have successfully trained, I'm going to say trained, a good portion of the MMA community into believing that, well, if you don't like the fight nights, you're just not a real fan. No, I don't accept bad things. That's what it is. The vast majority of UFC Apex events that are fight nights now, I'm sorry, are painfully mid. It is the hodgepodge of MMA events. And the reason that it bothers me as much as it does is because the UFC, I believe, has reached a point where they are aware that they don't compete with any other organization anymore. Let's be real. I know people are going to bring up the PFL and 1FC and Bellator. Well, 1FC and Bellator. They are not competing with them anymore. That's no longer happening. What is happening now is the UFC is about to become the global NFL to MMA. That's the truth. I understand 1FC is big in Asia. The UFC is big everywhere. That is what's going to happen, and that's what I believe. They have reached the point where they no longer have to improve every single fight night anymore. They don't have to make these deals being done. They are going to stack the numbered cards, and they are going to make the fight nights painfully average because they want to maintain, not improve. Let me tell you what I mean. Tai Tuivasa versus Tybura, the first fight night that's coming up, it's going to be happening this weekend by the time I'm making this video, is a painfully average card. Tai Tuivasa versus Tybura was supposed to be on the UFC 298 card, on the main card, but they took it off and made it its own fight night main event. I can't even make that up. That is not a good sign. So right away, by the UFC's definition, the main event is a fight that barely makes the main card, because I believe this was the main card opener of UFC 298 originally. So Tai Tuivasa versus Tybura is a main card opener bout. Let's also look what we're going into. Brian Battle versus Anze Lusa. Mid. Brian Battle's good, don't get me wrong, but Brian Battle, just about every fight he's had in his career has been at the Apex. They just don't know what to do with him. He has become the Apex guy. Oven St. Preux versus Kennedy. A decent Nigerian prospect. This is what I feel like it is. I think the UFC looks at fight nights now as just a chore, and they can say, hey, we've been having events go on every single week leading up to it, but look at the events. It reminds me of like when you're a kid and you're asking your mom, it's like, hey, can we get McDonald's? But in this case, we're asking Dana, hey, can we get a good UFC card? And then your mom or Dana looks at you, it's just like, hey, we have a good UFC event at home. Apex fight cards. That is what it is. It's just enough. Like, you get Gerald Meerschaert. Okay. Brian Barberena, not a bad name. You get Brian Battle, he's fun to watch. Tai Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura. This is the only decent fight on the entire card because of Tai Tuivasa. If it was like some fucking nobody versus Marcin Tybura, ain't nobody watching this shit except for the people that have to watch it. Next up, Amanda Ribas versus Rose Namajunas. Ugh! Bad. Amanda Ribas versus Rose Namajunas. I'm sorry. This is an insane... I understand why it's the main event, because ain't no way you can make Carl Williams versus Justin Tafa a main event. This is probably the worst offender out of the entirety of the video. This is such a god-awful card. Mohammed Usman is fighting Mick Parkin. They're giving him another obese... I'm just kidding, he's not that bad. No, I was about to say another obese heavyweight. He's not that bad. Mohammed Usman also isn't great. Dude, you have 4 people on this card that don't even have a profile pic yet. That's not a good sign. One of them's on the main card. Billy Quarantillo, okay, that's not that bad. Cameron Simon, he has actually a pretty good YouTube channel. Give him a check out. It's the same thing. Cameron Simon, he does a podcast. He did one with MMA Guru. That's what a lot of people recognize him from. Good speaker, good production value. Honestly, he barely missed out on the MMA content tier list that I made a while back. Maybe I'll make a part 3. Good, pretty cool dude. But overall, no, back to this. No, this card is shit. No, it's bad. Another Apex. We have 2 Apexes in a row. And then we get a small arena in Atlantic City. Aaron Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. You want to know why this is going in an arena and not an Apex event? Look what the co-main is. Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley is an insane barn burner. Burner. Fuck. Damn, that was bad. And Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley. Barn burner matchup. Said it right that time. Should be the main event. I have no clue how this isn't. Probably because Joaquin Buckley's ranked number 10. Wait, how? Number 10? How is he ranked number 10? That's kind of wild, actually. But Vicente Luque, that's an insane matchup. Should be the main event, but Aaron Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot is number 2 and number 3. And according to women's MMA, should be the main event. It's women's flyweight, so it's not going to be terrible, but Manon Fiorot did beat Rose Namajunas. Aaron Blanchfield is one of the few promising contenders that... Listen, if you want to be a star in women's MMA, it's as simple as this. You either have to be so dominant that you compete with Amanda Nunes, or you have to be semi-attractive and good. That is the uncomfortable truth of women's MMA that for whatever reason people don't want to bring up. It's the truth. You want to know why Ronda Rousey was a star in women's MMA and Misa Tate, but Chris Cyborg was kind of just seen as a thing that, oh yeah, I'm a fan of Chris Cyborg. Why? Because Ronda Rousey and Misa Tate were reasonably good looking, but Chris Cyborg looked like Vanderlei. I'm sorry. That is what it is. Even Dana has admitted to that. In women's MMA, you kind of have to be good looking. So, Aaron Blanchfield is their next star. Manon Fiorot has a win over Rose Namajunas. You can say Aaron Blanchfield is better than Rose if she beats Fiorot, making her a star. That is what it is. Just a friendly reminder, Rose Namajunas has 2 wins over Zhang Weili. Just saying. Vicente Luque, Joaquin Buckley. Not a bad one. Chris Weidman versus Bruno Silva. The unbreakable chin versus the breakable leg. Not a good sign. I mean, Uzbekistan, that's not terrible. 21 Savage. Sadikas Dumas. Bill Algeo versus Kyle Nelson. Not bad. And then we go down the shitter pretty quickly. Okay, Andre Petrosky's not that bad. And then we have a back to the Apex event, Marvin Vettori versus Brennan Allen. But guess what? That's not going to happen anymore because Marvin Vettori had to pull out. I said in the last video I wanted Kamaru Usman to step in, but I don't think good things happen that much. In this card, first off, they didn't even put effort into the fucking poster. I could make this poster in 15 minutes. That is how bad it is. Like, let's actually take a look. More effort. Actually, even this is pretty shit. This has more effort. This is nothing. Okay, I'm picking straws here. Oh. Trevor Peak. Alexander Hernandez is not terrible. Not a good card. Not a good card at all, actually. And Marvin Vettori's out, so it's Brennan Allen fighting some motherfucker. This is not a great card. You could save this card by putting Kamaru Usman in, and that instantly makes this fight night marketable. But there's no Marvin Vettori. Sorry, Brennan Allen's just not marketable enough. It is what it is. Not a great fight night, and that's why they're putting it in the Apex. That is the uncomfortable truth of these events, is they are aware that these would not sell out an arena, and that's why they're turning it into basically just Dana White the Contender Series, but as a card. And that's what the UFC Apex is being used as. And then we get UFC 300. And then back to the Apex. The UFC thinks you're dumb, okay? I wouldn't be as angry if the UFC themselves weren't like, if you don't like the Apex, you're not a real fight fan. Dog, I have been around since The Ultimate Fighter Season 13. And the Apex is an atrocity of an arena. The only fighters that like it are either told to say they like it, or 2, they just don't like fighting in front of crowds. Okay. But the thing is, If you're used to not fighting in front of a crowd and we put you in an arena for an actual contenders match, do you really want to go through the crowd fright in the middle of it, like the biggest fight of your career? The only times where the UFC Apex is a decent venue is when you have somebody like Kevin Holland and Strickland that talk a lot of shit, and you can get into that. But other than that, especially if we're dealing with two heavyweights, if that gets outside the first round, you're going to be seeing some obesity breathing, making you uncomfortable. That's what happened with the Rosenstreich and Gaziev fight. I just don't want... The only good news is this is probably going to end in a first-round KO, and it's going to be decent. But Rose Namajunas versus Ribas, below average. Blanchfield versus Fiora is only going to do well because Aaron Blanchfield has a name and seems semi-attractive, and Joaquin Buckley versus Vicente Luque is going to be a barn burner. Vittori's not even fighting on this card. Other than that, it's pretty mid. And then we have UFC 300. We're going to get a shit ton of ads for UFC 300 all throughout this event to remind you why you watch MMA. And then while you have me making content on it. And then we have UFC 300. Yeah, awesome. And then we have another Apex event. We have the Rio Arena. Oh, that's 301. Oh, St. Louis. Okay, then we actually have an arena. I'm just sick and tired of the Apex. I know why they do it, but I just don't like that they do it. The UFC is not interested in competing anymore because, frankly, they've already won. They don't have to compete with the PFL. Really boxing anymore. Boxing, as big of an enterprise that boxing is, the problem is it's such a big enterprise, none of them can agree on it. So they don't have to. So they're going to use this as an opportunity to say, we've had UFC fight nights this week, and this week. They weren't that good, and you had to pull fights off of the main card to make them. And you know it. And the reason, and you can say, oh, look we sold out the venue. Motherfucker, it was the Apex. Let's be real. You invited everybody here. And you don't have to disclose the ticket sales. But when this comes around, you're going to brag about what the ticket sales are, like these would have done well. That's a lie. Or, you know what? Maybe you make UFC tickets fucking affordable for us, and you put these in smaller venues, and that way, hey, we can watch. I would love to watch them. But I have to pay an arm and a leg to get into these venues. Make these cheaper then. You're going to make this cost absolutely insane. Ugh. If you don't have faith in a fight night and you have to put it in an Apex, understand 9 out of 10 times it's probably not a good card. Go back to the drawing boards. This is the only decent fight night it's looking up. There's going to be decent fights, don't get me wrong. But honestly, if I didn't have to make content on these would definitely be some that I would like tune in once in a while, but then I'd probably go to bed and not lose sleep over it. This is in trouble. This is decent. And then we got UFC 300 and then back to the Apex. I am done with the Apex. That's really what the video is about. The UFC is getting lazy with how they do fight nights. That's a fact. And I just wanted to talk about it. Tell me what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think about the upcoming fight nights? How do we fix the fight night system? And with that out of the way, adios, guys.